let's consider these beings as people. Even though they're non-human people, they're clearly people. They're sentient, intelligent beings coming to our planet from another star system. The United States military and intelligence agencies can legitimately treat them as an adversary or an enemy in some kind of war-making capacity, such as shooting down their UFOs. But we cannot allow those people who've been charged with a unique and narrow responsibility to be the sole people engaged in developing the relationship with the UFO people. We, as members of the United States citizenry, are uniquely situated to be able to have a direct effect upon our elected representatives. And we, therefore, have a unique responsibility. We cannot wait for authorization on the part of the executive branch or even by our Congress to do that. We have to undertake that process now. My name is Danny Sheehan. I'm a constitutional litigator who's worked some of the most important cases in modern American history. From Pentagon Papers, the Watergate scandal, to Iran-Contra. My legal career has led me now to this pivotal moment. As our human family confronts the implications of the existence here on our planet of extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional non-human species. I will be your guide as we dive into the profound philosophical, theological, and public policy questions pertaining to the UFO phenomenon, alien life, and the citizen movement for disclosure. This is the Full Disclosure Podcast, coming to you from the New Paradigm Institute on SpectraVision Radio. This is the final 2 weeks of the congressional session. This is the 2-week period in which lots of the big decisions get made by Congress. For example, the voting on President Trump's big, beautiful bill, the decision now as to whether or not there's going to be an extension of the Obama federal subsidies to the health care of Americans, the content of the National Defense Authorization Act, the multi-billion-dollar bill appropriating funds for all of the different defense and intelligence agencies. All of this is going on now. One of the reasons why this is so important is because now we have a final resolution from both the Senate and the House as to what the particular proposals are going to be in the National Defense Authorization Act pertaining to the funding of the United States Defense Department and intelligence agencies and related national security information. And we now know that there is, as a matter of official fact, not going to be anything in this multi-thousand-page bill on the national defense pertaining to the UFO phenomenon or any protection for UFO whistleblowers. Therefore, despite the best last-minute efforts on the part of Congressman Eric Burlison and others to see if it was possible to get inserted into the National Defense Bill the issue of the UFOs disclosure, that now has failed. This is a result of the House Rules Committee ruling, strangely enough, that the issue of UFOs was not adequately related to the national defense of the United States to qualify for being considered for a floor vote as part of the National Defense Authorization Act. This is quite peculiar, as we've noted earlier, since the drumbeat of the people inside the executive branch is constantly repeating this refrain that the UFO issue is primarily a national security issue, and therefore they have a right to keep it secret under the classification process, even from Congress. Now, this is an obvious manipulation going on inside baseball, as we say, inside the Beltway now, to try to keep the UFO disclosure process from moving forward. So this it now shows that it's going to be absolutely essential in the second of the two sessions here of this particular Congress, the second year of the election of the members of the House of Representatives, to introduce a new standalone UFO ET Disclosure Act. Congressman Eric Burlison has resolved that he is going to be introducing just such a standalone bill, not to continue the endeavor to try to get it inserted into the National Defense Authorization Act, but to get it voted on the House and the Senate side as a standalone bill. This bill is in the process of being drafted right now. Therefore, there are a number of legal issues that have been raised that are under discussion right now. One of them is whether or not the United States Congress has the constitutional authority to declassify information that has been classified by the executive branch. The bill that Congressman Burleson is introducing, like the Schumer-Rounds bill that passed the United States Senate back in 2023, proposes setting up a board created by Congress to declassify information, which the intelligence agencies and the Defense Department and the military services have all been ordered now by an act of Congress that was passed into law back in 2023 to turn over all of their information to the National Archives, putting it into the national security section of the National Archives. And so this bill, both as the Senate passed bill did and as the bill that is being proposed by Congressman Burleson, proposes setting up by Congress an agency that has the authority to declassify information pertaining specifically to the UFO issue. We as citizens need to speak out on behalf of Congressman Burleson's bill, insisting that the Congress of the United States has the constitutional authority to decide what information will be classified and will not be classified, okay? At least if we're not in a state of war. If we're in a state of war, there have been certain powers that the president is assumed to possess. The president, as the commander-in-chief, has certain kinds of authority that might arguably authorize him or her to classify certain information. But the argument that's being made now by Congress is that in peacetime, the president does not have the definitive plenipotentiary power of declaring whether a particular piece of information is going to be classified or not. Our New Paradigm Institute will make this bill available to you. It will prepare memos to explain to you in very simple, straightforward form, with the footnote that gives the authority for it, why Congress has this constitutional authority. We'll want you to be able to talk with your friends and neighbors about this bill, this Burleson bill. There's a case right now that is before the United States Supreme Court, and the name of the case is Trump versus Rebecca Slaughter. Rebecca Slaughter is the Democratic Party member of the Federal Trade Commission that was fired by Donald Trump. And he asserts that as an executive branch agency, that he has the authority as the president to fire any member of that Federal Trade Commission that he chooses to for any reason, including strictly political reasons. That in fact, that person is a member of a different political party than the president, or has a different policy view of things than the president does. And he's asserting, therefore, that he has a right to fire this person. Now, this is completely violative of the act that was passed by Congress setting up this Federal Trade Commission. The first section of that bill, it explicitly states that any person who is a member of this board or commission cannot be fired but for cause of incompetence or other things that have to do with the inability of that person to perform their duties, or for malfeasance. President Trump insists that, contrary to the actual provisions of the statute, that he has somehow inherent authority as the executive to terminate any person who is in any executive agency. This is his theory of the unitary presidency, and that he has now, in firing Rebecca Slaughter, the Democratic member of the commission, she filed a lawsuit in the federal district court in Washington, D.C., challenging his authority to do this because it's directly violative of the direct language of the statute creating that board that she's a member of. Okay. And so it's now before the United States Supreme Court, and that case is going to be deciding one of the essential questions that is being raised by people in the executive branch about the authority of Congress to establish this records review board, this UFO records review board, which the statute gives authority to declassify information about the UFO and ET issue that have been classified by the executive branch. There are some cases in which different justices on the Supreme Court have kind of waxed philosophical in what they call dictum in a legal case, where they have proposed that the president does have such authority, independent of whatever authority has been delegated to him by Congress in any particular statute, to do this. But it's clear that this obtains only in wartime. The age of disclosure, of course, is still being shown by people from the Citizens for Disclosure. Following each of the public showings, there will be an opportunity to talk about the film and what people's responses are to the film, what your opinions were about it. And there may, in some occasions, be people that are made available through the Citizens for Disclosure and or the New Paradigm Institute to answer questions. There is a process now going on to determine whether or not this particular documentary film is going to be nominated for an Academy Award. The members of the Academy of Arts and Sciences who determine these nominations are in the process of viewing the film now. So there's more and more people in the Hollywood community are now coming to view this film, because all of them are called upon to determine whether or not they want to nominate it for the Academy Award for the Best Documentary Film. And we want you to participate in this. There's going to be a great series of opportunities here over the holidays when people are going to have time to devote. Some people get to read a good book that they don't usually get to do. Some people watch the Twilight Zone over again. Some people spend their time watching reruns of The Godfather. But what we're proposing is that you, if you haven't done it yet, that you go to Amazon Prime and purchase a copy of The Age of Disclosure so that you can make it available to show it for free to your friends and neighbors. And another good piece of news, the chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, James Comer, has in fact agreed now publicly to extend the life of the task force that has been set up specially inside the House Oversight Committee, the task force on declassification of government secrets. This, as you will recall, is the special task force that has been so successful to date in pushing for the disclosure of all of the Jeffrey Epstein files. This is the same task force of the House Oversight Committee that has been tasked with responsibility on behalf of the House to declassify, secure the declassification of the UFO and ET information that is in the possession of executive branch agencies. You should check the website for the National Archives, the UAP website, and you will see that pieces of legislation that have been passed so far that commanded the turning over of all of the information to the National Archives has had only limited levels of success so far. What you'll see is that there's a process of drip, drip, drip going on now. All we're getting is old news. For example, the United States Air Force saying, oh, here is what we published in Project Blue Book that went on between 1952 and 1967. All of that's already been made public, and they're just regurgitating old things, 99% of which just denies the reality of the UFO phenomena. So that the drip, drip, process that's going on right now is functionally useless. Okay. And the activities of the Aero Office are themselves functionally useless. It's perfectly clear that the staff members of the Aero Office believe themselves not to be authorized to genuinely attempt to solicit and extract information genuinely about the UFO phenomenon and in any way make any of it public. We absolutely have to have this Burleson. As well intended and as effective potentially as the bill that is being proposed by Eric Burleson can potentially be, we know that there's going to be extraordinary amounts of pushback taking place inside the Beltway from the national security state people in the Pentagon and in the CIA, and putting pressure on the intelligence committees and the armed services committees in both the House and the Senate to try to stop this bill. And so we have to mobilize to reach out and encourage, literally encourage, give courage to your individual congressperson and both of your United States senators to support the passage of the Burleson bill. That is absolutely essential. This will not happen without this mobilization, because no matter how many people below a full majority in the House or the Senate want to have the Burleson bill passed, there will be efforts on the part of the major legacy group to stop the passage of this bill. We have to mobilize to do this. I want to make it clear that the people in the national security state do not believe themselves to be subject to the desires of the American people. They have their own agenda, which is usually driven by the private military interests of the United States Pentagon and by the economic interests of the private military contractors, in this case, the private aerospace corporations. And that therefore, they're going to be motivated by those forces to stop the passage of this bill unless we can mobilize overwhelming citizen support for the passage of this bill, as you saw happen with regard to the demand to publicly release the Epstein files. We have to generate a mass movement of that kind of power. Moreover, what we need to do is not rely ultimately upon just that process being fully effective. We need to reach out directly to the ET people. Let's consider these beings as people, even though they're non-human people, they're clearly people. They're sentient, intelligent beings, organic material beings coming to our planet from another star system, flying these UFOs, engaging in the activities that they're engaging in here on our planet, gathering up flora and fauna and genetic materials for whatever purpose they're doing, and surveilling, no doubt about it, surveilling the nuclear weapons facilities that the United States and Russia and China and North Korea, India, and other nations have been developing to try to threaten to destroy each other's nation states, all in support of whatever the particular economic and military ambitions are, even territorial ambitions that some of these nation states have that are armed with nuclear weapons. All of that's going on with regard to the ETs. But in addition to that, one of the things that has been testified to over and over and over and over again is that there is an actual capacity on the part of we as human beings to reach out telepathically and establish contact with the members of the extraterrestrial civilization, at least those who are here on our planet, and to solicit from them their active participation in this disclosure process. All kinds of information about the UFO stuff up until just a few years ago. Everybody tried to be convinced that it was kind of loony to be talking about this. But now we know that it's true. And therefore, we know that it's true that we can telepathically communicate with them. And what we have to do as citizens, reach out through a process of direct citizen diplomacy to the members of the extraterrestrial civilization to try to get them to actively participate in a sound and responsible disclosure process. working with us as citizens so that we can, in fact, start to disassemble these national security state infrastructures in all of these different human nation states so that we can prevent the use of thermonuclear weapons by any one or more of them to destroy our planet and to destroy all of the genetic material on our planet or to mutate it all. This is the challenge that we have here as citizens. We, as members of the United States citizenry, are uniquely situated to be able to have a direct effect upon our elected representatives. And we, therefore, have a unique responsibility to try to reach out to the ET beings and ask for their active participation in this responsible disclosure process. We will also, of course, be reaching out to citizens in other countries, to their parliaments, to pass legislation similar to the Burleson Bill, and reaching out to the citizens in those countries to demand disclosure so that we can build a worldwide movement that is not only capable of compelling disclosure out of our elected representatives, but can also begin to work together to try to determine what type of amendments need to be made to our present human structures here on our planet, our geopolitical structures, our economic structures, our domestic political structures, our religious institutions, our religious beliefs, our physical sciences. All of these things are going to be subject to amendment in light of the transparently obvious heightened knowledge that the ET people have in all of these areas. Okay, so that we all have to be engaged in that process. We cannot wait for authorization on the part of the executive branch or even by our Congress to do that. We have to undertake that process now. We at the New Paradigm Institute are going to be issuing an official public statement in response to the Age of Disclosure documentary film. In this statement, we're going to be pointing out that we believe very definitely that this particular 2-hour documentary film is an overall positive contribution moving forward the process of disclosure of the UFO and ET phenomena. There are a number of unique revelations that are made in this particular documentary film and a number of confirmations of other information that has been believed for a long time by a substantial majority of people in the UFO community. But they've confirmed it officially, and given their extraordinarily unique status inside the United States government, that it's taken on a much higher level of credibility now in light of this film. But at the same time, we want to point out that our New Paradigm Institute has a much more nuanced view of the assertions that are being made by a number of the people in the documentary film, Age of Disclosure, where they keep insisting that basically the mere presence of these beings on our planet in and of itself constitutes a national security threat because they don't submit themselves to our authority or the authority of our military people to actually enter into our airspace. And that therefore the United States military and intelligence agencies can legitimately treat them as an adversary or an enemy in some kind of war-making capacity, such as shooting down their UFOs. Okay, we don't agree with that. While completely understandable on the part of people who have spent their entire professional career inside the military or inside one of the intelligence agencies, because they have been specifically trained to have that perspective. But we cannot allow those people who've been charged with a unique and narrow responsibility to be able to be the sole people engaged in developing the relationship with the UFO people and whatever the policies are that are going to be undertaken by our country with regard to that. Okay, we point that out in our statement. We recommend that you go to our newparadigminstitute.org and read this statement. that we're providing is a short one-page statement, and we want that you familiarize yourself with the Institute's policy position with regard to the film. A vibrant discussion of these issues is what's necessary to mobilize the people of our country so that we will move forward and support the passage of the Burleson Bill, and that we will engage actively in the process of reaching out to establish direct citizen diplomacy with the extraterrestrial beings. This has been our report here in the final 2 weeks of the first session of our Congress. This is Danny Sheehan coming to you from the New Paradigm Institute, brought to you over SpectraVision Radio.
To join the citizen movement for disclosure, visit newparadigminstitute.org/takeaction.